I still remember the exact moment I realized I had accidentally built the world's most expensive freelance hobby. Not a business, not a career, a hobby. Because despite working 12-hour days, answering client messages at midnight, drinking enough coffee to qualify as a medical experiment, and calling myself a full-time freelancer on LinkedIn, I was making less money than the teenager working the drive-thru at McDonald's down the street. And the worst part? I genuinely thought I was crushing it. I had clients, I had projects, I had invoices, I had productivity YouTube videos playing in the background 24/7. I even bought one of those giant monitors that every successful freelancer on Twitter seemed to own. Apparently, nobody told me that buying expensive equipment is not the same thing as making money. But then something weird happened. I discovered a collection of software tools that completely changed how I worked. Not overnight, not in some magical make six figures while sleeping way, and definitely not because some guy in a Lamborghini sold me a course. What happened was much stranger. The software exposed a problem I didn't even know I had, a problem that was quietly destroying my income every single day. And once I fixed it, my freelance income started climbing. $2,000 months became $4,000 months. $4,000 became $7,000. Then one month, I opened my banking app and saw a number I never thought I'd see. 5 figures, over $10,000. But before that happened, everything almost fell apart. Because the software stack that eventually made me successful first forced me to confront a very uncomfortable truth. I was the bottleneck. And realizing that was honestly kind of humiliating.
3 years ago, my office looked like a crime scene. Not because anything illegal was happening. Although, judging by my bookkeeping, the IRS might have had questions. No, it looked like a crime scene because there were coffee cups everywhere, empty energy drink cans, sticky notes, random chargers, a half-eaten protein bar that had somehow become part of the furniture. And in the middle of this chaos sat me, a freelance video editor, 27 years old, living in a tiny apartment, trying desperately to convince myself I was building a successful business. The apartment wasn't terrible, but it wasn't exactly the kind of place people show in those day in the life of a six-figure entrepreneur videos either. The kitchen was about 6 feet from my bed. My desk was in the living room. My living room was also my dining room. And occasionally it became my emotional support center whenever clients decided not to pay invoices, which happened more often than I'd like to admit. Back then, my income looked like a roller coaster designed by a psychopath. One month I'd make $4,000. The next month I'd make $900, then $3,500, then $1,200. Then suddenly a big project would arrive. Then silence. I wasn't running a business. I was financially speed dating random clients and hoping one of them would stick around. Every month felt like survival. Every notification gave me anxiety. Every email could either contain money or disaster, sometimes both. And somehow I thought this was normal, because every freelancer online seemed stressed, every freelancer talked about hustle, every freelancer seemed exhausted. So I figured exhaustion was proof I was succeeding. Looking back, that was incredibly stupid, but I wasn't the only one. The internet had convinced an entire generation of freelancers that burnout was a personality trait.
At first, I thought my problem was productivity. This where things started getting ridiculous. I became obsessed, absolutely obsessed. If a productivity app existed, I downloaded it. Task managers, calendar systems, focus apps, habit trackers, Pomodoro timers, second brain systems, digital notebooks, time blocking software, AI assistants. I had more productivity tools than actual paying clients. At one point, I spent 3 hours organizing my task manager, 3 hours, to avoid doing actual work. I was basically procrastinating professionally, and I was getting really good at it. My YouTube recommendations became dangerous. Every thumbnail looked the same. A guy sitting in front of a glowing monitor, arms crossed. Title: "This app changed my life." Then I'd watch the video, download the app, spend 2 hours setting it up, use it twice, then forget it existed. Repeat. I wasn't building systems. I was collecting software like Pokemon cards. Then one morning something happened that made me question everything. A client emailed me. Nothing unusual there.
The unusual part was what the email said. Just checking in. Did you see my message from last week? My stomach dropped. I searched my inbox, and there it was. A message from 7 days earlier, completely missed. A $2,000 project. Gone. Because I forgot to reply. I wish I could tell you that was the only time. It wasn't. Not even close. That's when I started noticing a pattern. Projects slipping through cracks, deadlines becoming stressful, client communication becoming chaotic, files scattered everywhere, invoices forgotten, follow-ups delayed. Nothing catastrophic individually, but together, it was costing me thousands, and I didn't even realize it. At this point, things got weird, because around the same time, I met someone who completely changed how I viewed freelancing. I met him at a co-working space. Let's call him Jake. Jake was one of those annoyingly calm people. You know the type. Everything seems under control. Inbox clean, desk organized, projects delivered, hair somehow perfect. Meanwhile, I looked like I had been fighting a small war against Microsoft Excel. Jake wasn't dramatically smarter than me. He wasn't working longer hours. He wasn't even in a more profitable niche. But somehow he was making nearly triple my income, and I couldn't figure out why. One afternoon, I finally asked, "Dude, what are you doing differently?" He laughed, then asked a question I wasn't expecting. "How many software tools do you use every day?" I started listing them. The list kept growing and growing and growing. Eventually, Jake looked genuinely concerned, like a doctor discovering a new disease. Then he said something that annoyed me. "Your problem isn't that you don't have enough software." Pause. "It's that none of your software talks to each other." At first, I thought that sounded stupid. Then he showed me his workflow, and my brain nearly exploded. Everything was connected. Client inquiry, automatic response, project management, contracts, invoices, time tracking, file organization, meeting scheduling, follow-ups. Everything flowed together. No chaos, no sticky notes, no forgotten emails, no guessing. It looked less like freelancing and more like an operating system. Meanwhile, my workflow looked like someone had dumped puzzle pieces onto the floor and hoped for the best. That's when I became obsessed again, but this time for a different reason. I wasn't looking for more apps. I was looking for a system. And that search would eventually lead me to the software stack that changed everything. Unfortunately, before it started making me money, it created a disaster I never saw coming. And that disaster began with a client, a missed invoice, and one of the most embarrassing phone calls of my entire career. The embarrassing phone call happened on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were usually my everything is under control days. Mondays were chaos. Fridays were survival. Tuesdays were supposed to be civilized. At 10:17 a.m., my phone rang. It was my landlord. And that's never a sentence that ends well. I answered. Immediately, I knew something was wrong. He sounded polite, the dangerous kind of polite. The kind of polite that says, "I'm trying very hard not to become your problem." "Hey," he said, "just checking on rent." My stomach instantly transformed into a concrete block. Rent? What did he mean checking on rent? Rent had been paid. At least I thought it had. Then I opened my banking app and discovered a horrifying reality. The automatic payment had failed 3 weeks earlier. 3 weeks earlier. And I hadn't noticed because I was so busy trying to grow my freelance business that I wasn't managing my actual finances. The irony was painful. I was editing marketing videos about business growth while accidentally becoming the human equivalent of financial spaghetti. The landlord was surprisingly understanding. I, however, wanted to teleport into another dimension. After the call ended, I sat at my desk, staring at my monitor. Then I opened my invoicing folder and found something worse. 3 unpaid invoices, 1 forgotten invoice, 2 clients who needed follow-ups, a project proposal I'd never sent, and an email draft sitting untouched for 12 days. It looked like an archaeological dig site, layers of forgotten tasks everywhere. At that moment, I realized something uncomfortable. I wasn't struggling because I lacked talent. I wasn't struggling because clients were terrible. I wasn't struggling because the market was saturated. I was struggling because my business was being run by a distracted raccoon. And unfortunately, that raccoon was me. That afternoon, I decided something had to change. No more random software. No more downloading apps because a productivity influencer told me to. No more treating organization like an optional side quest. I needed a real system. So I started auditing everything, and the results were ugly. Every day looked like this. Wake up, check email, forget why I opened email, open Slack, get distracted, open YouTube, watch top 10 productivity hacks, feel productive, do 0 productive things, panic, work until midnight, repeat. The first thing I changed was project management. Before, every project lived in a different location. Some information was in email, some in notes, some in my brain, which is the worst place to store important information. My brain couldn't even remember where I left my coffee half the time. So I built a proper project dashboard. Every client, every deadline, every deliverable, everything visible. At first, it felt unnecessary. Then 3 days later, it saved me from missing a major deadline. That got my attention. Then I added time tracking, and this is where my ego got absolutely destroyed. Because I thought I worked 10 hours a day. Turns out, I worked about 4. The rest was chaos. Context switching, scrolling, checking messages, watching tutorials, reorganizing folders, looking busy. The software didn't lie, and I hated it, but it was right.
The first week of tracking my time was emotionally devastating. Not because the numbers were bad, because they were honest. I discovered that a 2-hour project often took 6 hours. Not because the work was difficult, because I kept interrupting myself. Every notification was a tiny productivity assassin. Every email became a side quest. Every Slack message became a detour. Every YouTube tab became a trap. I wasn't managing my attention. I was donating it to whoever requested it first. That's when things started changing. Slowly, then faster. Projects moved quicker. Clients got responses faster. Deadlines stopped feeling terrifying. And something interesting happened. Clients noticed. One client replied, "Wow, that was fast." Another said, "You're incredibly organized." A third literally told me, "You feel more professional than agencies we've worked with." That sentence stayed in my head, because behind the scenes, I was still the same guy. Same apartment, same desk, same caffeine addiction. But the systems created a completely different experience for clients. And clients pay for experiences, not effort. That realization was worth thousands. I just didn't know it yet.
Here's the part nobody talks about. Improvement can be dangerous, because when things started working, I immediately did something stupid. I accepted more work, way more work. Classic freelancer mistake. You become efficient. Then, instead of enjoying life, you decide to fill every available second with additional projects. For about 3 months, I was convinced I had cracked the code. Income climbed, projects increased, clients multiplied. The software stack was working. Everything seemed amazing. Then reality arrived. Hard. I started waking up exhausted. My eyes hurt constantly. My shoulders felt like concrete. Weekends disappeared. Friends stopped inviting me places because I always said no. My grocery shopping strategy became whatever requires the least amount of decision-making. In one Friday night, I found myself sitting alone at my desk at 11:43 p.m., editing revisions for a client I didn't even like, eating cold fries, watching other people enjoy their lives on Instagram. And suddenly I had a terrifying thought. What if I accidentally built a better prison? Sure, I was making more money, but I was also working more than ever. The software stack had solved the organization problem. It hadn't solved the scalability problem. And then came the twist, the thing that changed everything, the thing I absolutely did not see coming.
The email arrived at 2:14 a.m. I remember the exact time because I couldn't sleep. I was doom scrolling, a hobby I highly recommend avoiding. The subject line read, "Quick question about AI." Now, normally that wouldn't be scary, but this was 2024, and freelancers everywhere were having the same nightmare: AI.
Every day, another headline appeared. AI will replace designers. AI will replace writers. AI will replace editors. AI will replace everyone except apparently the people writing these headlines. Fear was everywhere. So naturally, my heart rate doubled. I opened the email. The client wrote, "We've been testing some AI editing tools." Pause. Not good. My brain immediately started planning my funeral. Then I kept reading. "We actually need more content now." Wait, what? I read the sentence again. Then again. Then a fourth time because it was 2 a.m. and my brain wasn't functioning properly. The client continued. "The AI makes production faster, but we still need strategy, editing decisions, storytelling, revisions, client management, and quality control." Then came the sentence that changed everything. "We'd like to increase your workload." I almost dropped my phone. For months, I had been terrified AI would eliminate my business. Instead, it increased demand. And suddenly, I saw something I had completely missed. The highest paid freelancers weren't selling labor. They were selling systems. Clients weren't paying for mouse clicks. They were paying for outcomes. The software stack wasn't just helping me organize. It was helping me operate like a business. And businesses scale. Freelancers who only sell time don't. That realization hit me like a truck. Then things got even crazier. Because 2 weeks later, I received an opportunity that would push my income closer to $10,000 a month than ever before. But accepting it required taking a massive risk. A risk that could either double my income or completely wreck everything I'd spent years building. And honestly, at first, I almost said no.
2 weeks after that AI email, a client asked for a meeting. Nothing unusual. Clients ask for meetings all the time. Usually it's one of three things: more work, less work, or a request that somehow triples the workload without increasing the budget. So naturally, I prepared for disappointment. Instead, the meeting completely blindsided me. The client leaned back in his chair and said, "We have a problem." Never a comforting opening sentence. Then he continued, "We keep hiring freelancers and they keep dropping the ball." Interesting. He started listing issues: missed deadlines, poor communication, slow turnaround times, lost files, confusing revision processes, lack of consistency. The more he talked, the more uncomfortable I became, because he was describing the exact freelancer I used to be. Then he said something unexpected. "We don't need another editor." Pause. "We need someone who can manage the whole content operation." For a second, I genuinely thought he was talking about somebody else. I even looked behind me. Nobody there. Just me. The former professional procrastinator. The guy who once lost a $2,000 project because he forgot to answer an email. Apparently, that guy was now being offered something much bigger. The project would more than double my monthly income. There was only one problem. I had absolutely no idea how to handle that amount of work alone. The panic phase. The next 48 hours were pure chaos. Not external chaos, internal chaos. Because opportunity sounds exciting until it arrives. Then suddenly it becomes terrifying. I started calculating numbers: project volume, deadlines, client expectations, potential revenue, potential disasters, potential embarrassment, everything. And the math wasn't looking great. If I accepted the work and failed, I could damage my reputation. If I rejected it, I'd probably spend the next year wondering what could have happened. My brain turned into a courtroom. One side argued, "You are not ready." The other side argued, "You'll never be ready." Neither side was particularly helpful. At one point, I called a freelancer friend for advice. After listening to me panic for 20 minutes, he interrupted. "Dude, what? Why are you acting like you're still working the way you did 2 years ago?" I paused, because he had a point. The version of me in my head was outdated. I still saw myself as the overwhelmed freelancer drowning in sticky notes, but that wasn't true anymore. The systems were different. The business was different. I was different. Sometimes success arrives before your self-image catches up.
That realization changed everything. So I said yes, and immediately regretted it.
The first month was insanity. Pure insanity. New projects arrived constantly, client messages increased, deadlines multiplied, meetings appeared everywhere. At first, I thought everything would collapse, but something strange happened. The systems held. The project management system tracked everything. The invoicing system kept cash flow organized. The scheduling system prevented calendar disasters. The time tracking system showed where work was leaking. Automation handled repetitive tasks. Templates eliminated unnecessary decisions. For the first time in my freelance career, growth didn't automatically create chaos. That was new. Historically, more clients meant more stress. Now, more clients simply meant more volume. And volume is much easier to manage than chaos. Around week 3, I noticed something unusual. I wasn't constantly panicking anymore. That might sound small, but freelancers know exactly what I'm talking about. That background anxiety, the constant fear, the feeling that you're forgetting something important, the sensation that disaster is hiding behind your inbox. It was fading. Not completely. I'm still a freelancer. Let's stay realistic. But enough to notice, enough to breathe, enough to focus. And when focus improves, income often follows.
Then came the morning. The morning I'll probably remember forever. I was sitting at my desk drinking coffee. For once, the coffee wasn't emergency coffee. It was victory coffee, a completely different category. I opened my banking app, mostly out of habit, and there it was. 5 figures, over $10,000 earned that month. I stared at the screen, then refreshed it again, then took a screenshot, then sent it to 3 people, then checked again, because apparently I didn't trust mathematics anymore. For a few minutes, I just sat there, quiet, no celebration, no dramatic movie soundtrack, no fireworks, just disbelief. Because I knew what that number actually represented. It wasn't just money, it was proof. Proof that the years of mistakes had taught me something. Proof that organization matters. Proof that systems matter. Proof that freelancing doesn't have to feel like permanent financial turbulence. Most importantly, proof that I wasn't trapped. For years, I'd believed income growth required working harder. The software stack taught me something different. Growth often comes from removing friction, and friction had been everywhere.
Now, here's the funny part. People always expect some secret software list, some magical combination of tools hidden inside a mountain monastery guarded by productivity monks. The reality is much less exciting. The tools themselves weren't special. The way they worked together was. My stack focused on 5 things: client management, project management, time tracking, automation, financial organization. That's it. Nothing revolutionary, nothing flashy, nothing worthy of a billionaire mastermind montage. The power came from connecting everything. Every client had a process, every project had a workflow, every invoice had a system, every task had a place, every deadline had visibility, every repetitive action was automated whenever possible. The software wasn't generating money, the software was eliminating mistakes, and mistakes had been costing me a fortune. Missed emails, late invoices, forgotten follow-ups, disorganized projects, lost opportunities. All those tiny leaks added up. Fix enough leaks and the bucket starts filling.
Looking back, reaching $10,000 per month wasn't really a software story. It was an identity story. For years, I thought freelancers got stuck because they lacked skills. Sometimes that's true, but often they get stuck because they're trying to operate a growing business using systems designed for survival mode. I was running a 6-figure ambition with a $500 a month workflow. Eventually, that mismatch becomes painful. The software stack forced me to act like the person I wanted to become before I felt ready. And that's uncomfortable, because growth is uncomfortable. Nobody talks about that enough. The internet loves showing results. Nobody shows the awkward middle, the missed invoices, the forgotten emails, the embarrassing landlord calls, the burnout, the self-doubt, the moments where you wonder whether you're secretly ruining your life. But those moments matter.
they're usually where the real lessons happen. These days, my apartment looks different. Not perfect, let's not get carried away. There are still coffee cups, there are still random cables, there is currently a mysterious charger on my desk that belongs to absolutely nothing I own. Some mysteries remain unsolved, but the business is different, the stress is different, the systems are different, and most importantly, the relationship with money is different. Because the biggest thing freelancing taught me wasn't how to make more money, it was how expensive disorganization can be. Sometimes the opportunity isn't hidden in finding another client. Sometimes it's hidden in finally fixing the mess that's already sitting on your desk. And honestly, if my younger self could see my workflow now, he'd probably think I'd become some kind of productivity wizard. The truth is much less impressive. I just stopped making the same mistakes over and over. Although, knowing me, I'm sure I'll discover some exciting new mistakes soon enough. After all, I'm still a freelancer. And if freelancing has taught me anything, it's that the next unexpected email is probably already on its way.